So the next area is boys in education, and I think it kind of follows on from fathers. So, what's the current situation regarding the education of boys in Ireland?
Boys have been falling behind in education for many years, and their needs are not being addressed. The teaching staff is 86% female at primary level and more than 70% female at secondary level. It is therefore not surprising that boys are often held to the sort of behaviour norms which are suitable for girls, but not suitable for boys. It also means that boys do not have role models in their lives, in their education, and they are often not encouraged to do well academically.
So,
and a number of sources, a number of studies have drawn attention to these issues, including the OECD, studies from the OECD. There has also been a study called Taking Boys Seriously, which has been carried out by two Northern Ireland academics, and there is also one by Warren Farrell, who is a well-known advocate for men's issues.
So, what does Men's Voices want to see happen with regard to how can we improve the situation for boys in education?
Much more attention must be paid to how boys learn. In this regard, the recommendations made by the report called Taking Boys Seriously contains some very good recommendations which need to be put into practice. In fact, one of the things they drew attention to, they found that the most important factor in learning, particularly for boys, was the teacher-pupil relationship. This was absolutely important.
Yeah, and I do remember kind of in my time in school, especially in secondary school, like there was several teachers who were really good and kind of I used as role models. So I think it's the lack of role models that are really damaging kind of boys growing up.
That's correct. Yeah, measures must also be taken to increase the number of male teachers, both at primary and secondary level, as the OECD recommends. I haven't mentioned third level, but there are differences at third level also. In third level, there are a number of areas in which females predominate. Areas such as law, medicine, education, and psychology. There can be a very large number of females as opposed to boys in these areas, and this is important also from the point of view of social policy. As well as that, women, more women have third level qualifications than men. For instance, a recent report found that about 60% of women between the ages of 24 and 34 have a third level of qualification, as opposed to 52% of men. And yet another measure of the discrepancy is that if you look at recent graduates, the number of graduates, the percentage of graduates in Ireland, third level graduates in Ireland, which are female, was 53.8% in 2017, as opposed to 46.2% for men. So this again is quite a wide gap.
So the next area we're going to look at is it's also quite a big one, but it's also one that I kind of find quite interesting, and it's false allegations of rape, sexual assault, domestic violence, and child abuse. So, what's the current situation regarding false allegations in Ireland?
False allegations of rape, sexual assault, and child abuse are being heard increasingly. But there's little in the way of hard data available. But in the UK in 2018, there was a storm created when it was found that 4 rape charges in quick succession were found to be false. And this was in part due to the fact that evidence which was essential and crucial was not made known until the very last moment. This caused the Crown Prosecution Service to actually review all of the rape charges that were then current. More than 600 of them were reviewed, and 47 were thrown out as a result of this review. The head of the Crown Prosecution Service at that time was a woman named Alison Saunders, and it was well recognized that during that time bias was evident in the way cases were being handled.
Yeah, and like you say, like while good data is lacking, it more and more examples of false allegations are kind of popping up. So it really is something that needs to be looked at, I think, quite a bit. So I think the reason why a lot of people don't look at false allegations is because I'd say they might be maybe afraid of what they might find. So, but then it kind of does ask the question: how do you avoid false allegations? How do you kind of separate? How do you separate the supporting actual victims with then kind of rooting out the false allegations?
Well, there are a couple of factors here. Judges need to be trained. Now, the Rape Crisis Network Ireland and the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre were very quick off the blocks here, and they are now training judges and others in these cases. But their point of view cannot be said to be impartial, so there is a need for a different point of view to put to counterbalance this kind of training. There is a second factor, and that is the handling of false allegations which have been proven to be false. There must be proper prosecution of false allegations, the allegations which are known to be false, and terms of imprisonment must be imposed. But that has not happened at all. Terms of imprisonment are actually extremely rare, or non-existent, when accusations of this kind are shown to be false. And this is also the case in the UK. In fact, the Crown Prosecution Service in the UK has told prosecutors that they shouldn't bring false allegation charges against a person unless they are certain, virtually certain, that there will be a conviction obtained. That is one way of dealing with it. There has to be much more serious thought put into the way false allegations are handled.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest examples of false allegations that I can recall happened a few years ago was that of Sergeant McCabe.
That's right. This was in relation to false allegation of child abuse.
Yeah.
And this was one of the most serious cases. The charges against Sergeant McCabe were made, I think, go back to 2014, and the charges were maintained for a very long period of time, even though it was becoming evident that there was no basis to them.
Yeah.
And still they were maintained. So it shows that there is a climate of opinion there, which thinks that men are actually guilty in many of these cases. We also know, for instance, that false allegations of child abuse are currently being made in the family courts in order to win a favourable outcome in the family courts. And this too needs to be tackled.